guys, welcome back to a brand new video, and this might be an obscure topic, but I'm a bit of a movie guy. I live for the culture and class, and anything that isn't fine wine or British is below me. Now let me introduce you to some fine dining. The life of a king, huh? Isn't my collection glamorous? The finest wine? The finest food? I have the finest things in this collection right here. My little cubicle. However, there's one thing in my collection that I treasure more than all you see before you. And that's this. Future me, zoom in on that.
SpongeBob SquarePants, Nickelodeon's beaten horse. SpongeBob is one of, if not the most popular cartoon of all time. The show's been going on for almost 25 years, and while it has fluctuated in quality, its iconic presence in culture today cannot be understated. If you don't at least know what SpongeBob is, either you're living under a rock or you're from the pre-Sponge era of the world. With a show this high quality, surely it would have had some ties in the movie business, right? Well, the good news, it does! Over the course of its run, SpongeBob has had 3 movies, with 2 more on the way.
All 3 of these movies vary in quality, as they all released in vastly different points in the show's history. I think it's fascinating that we have a movie from the golden era, the dark ages, and even the revival era of the show. So I thought it would be fun to look back at the SpongeBob Movie Trilogy to see how the series evolved. From the SpongeBob SquarePants movie in 2004, all the way to the SpongeBob movie Sponge on the Run from 2020.
So first, let's look at the first movie. Go figure. 2004's The SpongeBob SquarePants movie is an iconic film, no doubt about that. Released in an era of cartoon-based movies oversaturating the market, it stands out as one of, if not the highest quality one in terms of story, character, and relevance to the series, wrapping the show up in a neat little bow. It was the first movie I ever remember seeing as a kid, and is absolutely one of the greatest movies of my generation. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. The 2 sequels that this movie would get years later just don't hold a candle to this masterpiece. The story follows SpongeBob and Patrick journeying to Shell City to retrieve King Neptune's crown in order to clear Mr. Krabs' name after he was framed and frozen in ice. Meanwhile, Plankton uses this opportunity to finally get his hands on the Krabby Patty secret formula and enslaves Bikini Bottom. It sounds like a simple plot, but there actually is so much going on here character-wise. SpongeBob has a prime motivation driving him throughout the entire film, which is to prove that he's not a kid so he can be manager of the new Krusty Krab 2, located right next door to the original. Plankton is proving that he's not small by finally devising a plan to take over the world. He becomes quite the intimidating villain in this one, even sending an assassin after Bob and Pat when he finds out that they can foil his plans. Mindy, King Neptune's daughter, wants to prove that she can be a ruler with compassion by listening to problems and helping with pacifism. There's so much depth here that the movie uses to its advantage. SpongeBob and Patrick face many trials on their road trip that test their maturity, eventually even becoming men thanks to Mindy putting a salad on their faces. However, Dennis, the assassin, catches up to them and gives them a healthy dose of reality. Just before he's gonna kill him though, Bigger Boot comes in and kidnaps our duo and takes him to the surface. It turns out this is where Shell City was, and as they die, they recognize that they made it all the way here and feel proud of themselves. Yeah, SpongeBob and Rat Prick die. Really fucked me up as a kid. It's a pretty emotional scene, but thanks to the tear of the Goofy Goobers, the electricity short circuits and starts the sprinklers, bringing them back to life. So Sponge and Rick escape Bigger Boot and Shell City with the crown, and with the help of David Hasselhoff, they make it back to Bikini Bottom just in time to save Mr. Krabs from execution. However, Plankton enslaves Neptune and gets ready to use him against our boys when suddenly...
Take it easy! What the scallop?
So, Plankton is defeated using the power of rock and roll, and SpongeBob is finally recognized as more than just a kid. The movie ends with him getting the position of manager and the credits roll. This movie is still great 20 years later, and for many is the peak of the show. It's a wonderful story that initially meant to serve as the ending to the series, before it kept going and going and going and going. The story is great, the characters are excellent. SpongeBob has a complete hero's journey from start to finish, as does Plankton, as does Mindy, and as does Neptune and Krabs. The simple premise leaves room for so much development for the characters and locations and motivations, and I think that's why this movie works so much. It doesn't try to make things more complex than it needs to be, it just knows what it is. It captures the heart and humor of the show as well, balancing the randomness with the witty humor. It's not loud, bombastic, look at the funny face humor like how the show would eventually turn out to be. It just works. I will say that it may be hypocritical to praise some of the more random elements, like David Hasselhoff or the Goofy Goober rock scene, because you'll soon see that the second and third movies rely on this random humor and plot elements and thinks it's doing something with it. It works here because they play it straight and don't pat themselves on the back just because they're doing something that came out of nowhere. Though, a legit gripe I have with the first movie is that a good majority of the characters from the show are absent from the story. Characters like Sandy, Gary, and even Squidward are tossed to the sidelines. And I think the movie would have benefited if they had something to do in Bikini Bottom. Maybe an uprising against Plankton that ultimately fails. They kind of do that with Squidward, but it could have been much better if more characters got involved. Though, this is a blessing in disguise, as it gives room for the movie to give its full focus to SpongeBob's arc, so it's no big deal. Also, King Neptune has a completely different design and personality from the show, which is really funny to me. It's nothing major because up to this point he only appeared like once in the series, but it's just funny. It's not like SpongeBob ever really cared about continuity though. No, it doesn't, trust me.
Overall, 20 years later, the SpongeBob SquarePants movie still holds up really well. It's not only the best in the series, but to be honest, it might just be the best cartoon movie in general. It's that good. And since we all know it's that good, I don't actually have that much to say about it. This movie is an excellent 9 out of 10 that is always fun upon rewatch. Now that we're done with this, let's move on to the other drivel.
The second film in the Sponge Trilogy would be 2015's The SpongeBob Movie Sponge Out of Water, and was released about 10 years after the original movie's release. Sponge Out of Water's release is an interesting case. It saw the return of original creator Steven Hillenburg to helm the film, which would lead to his full return to showrun the series in his final years. It was the first theatrical film based on an established television series in years, after a whole decade of them oversaturating the market. And in a world of exclusively 3D animated features, it was the first major 2D animated movie in theaters since 2011's Winnie the Pooh. It also randomly brought back Pharrell Williams' old band Nerd. See, there was a lot riding on this one. Sponge Out of Water is a sequel 10 years in the making. With a lot of expectations thrown onto this movie, how exactly did it turn out? I mean, I thought it was alright. Nothing groundbreaking by any means, but at the same time, it's not the absolute bottom of the barrel like some other SpongeBob movie. Just a standard run-of-the-mill cartoon movie. With some glaring flaws. This movie's identity is all over the place. The film follows SpongeBob, Patrick, Squidward, Sandy, Mr. Krabs, and even Plankton journeying to the surface and becoming superheroes, battling the villainous pirate Burgerbeard in order to get the secret formula back after he stole it using a magic book that makes anything written in it come true. At least that's what the last 30 minutes of the movie are about, because there's a whole other hour of the movie that the trailers just failed to mention. The marketing for this movie is so misleading to the point where the movie story falls apart if you haven't seen any trailers. You'll see what I mean in a second. That being said, despite the movie advertising this ensemble CGI journey on the surface, the story at its core is actually about SpongeBob and Plankton. We don't actually see Krabs, Sandy, Patrick, or Squidward for a majority of the movie. The story begins with Burgerbeard on Bikini Atoll searching for a book of some kind, which we learned tells the story of SpongeBob and his daily routine, and the story of how all of that would come to a halt. This would make you think that Burgerbeard is just the cold open for the movie, much like the pirates from the first, only this time taking a more narrative approach. After the recap, we jump straight into an action sequence with Bob, Pat, and Plankton, who unleashes machine after machine in this war zone. Eventually, using his smarts and his moveset from Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2, Plankton does get his hands on the formula. However, as he and SpongeBob fight over it, it just disappears out of thin air. And conveniently, the Krusty Krab is out of Krabby Patties too, so no formula means no new patties, and no patties means society collapses, I guess. You know, something I miss about earlier seasons of SpongeBob is the show not treating the Krusty Krab and Krabby Patties like God on Earth. I'm sorry, but this just feels so tacky. Everyone immediately goes on a manhunt for Plankton since, you know, who else would steal it? But because SpongeBob knows that for once he's innocent, he has to take it upon himself to side with him. With Bikini Bottom and Chaos, this seems like the end of the story for our heroes, but thanks to some bitch-ass seagulls, Burger Beard is forced to read more of the story. So, with the formula missing, SpongeBob and Plankton agree to team up and find it. And this is where the movie starts to drag a lot. We spend a lot of time kind of just dicking around learning about teamwork and how we should put a team together. And wow, isn't it funny how Plankton says teamwork instead of teamwork? This entire hour of the movie is so unfocused and drags on for so much longer than I remember. SpongeBob tries to recruit Patrick. Oh look, he's a dick because of the apocalypse. Then we go to the tree dome to recruit Sandy, and oh look, she's crazy because of the apocalypse. Then we go back to SpongeBob's house to recruit Gary, and oh look, he's a dick because of the apocalypse. Then SpongeBob and Plank flee to this mountain outside of town. Then Plankton goes inside Bob's brain to look for the formula. Then we go back to Bikini Bottom to rescue Karen because now they're gonna build a time machine. Then Karen dies. Try explaining that one to the continuity heads. Then we go forward in time to where Bikini Bottom is destroyed. Then we go out of time to this weird space layer where the Watcher, I mean Bubbles, is watching the universe but needs to piss. So SpongeBob and Plankton watch for him, but they destroy Saturn and Jupiter, so he tries to kill them, but they escape to the past where they steal the formula from past Plankton, who's trying to steal the secret formula by replacing it with an imposter. And then we go back to the present where the day seems to be saved, except oops, they accidentally grabbed the wrong bottle. So the apocalypse is back on. And then Patrick uses the time machine and brings in a fucking T-Rex, which causes its own chaos. And then SpongeBob gives a speech talking about how monstrous the town has become. But instead of seeing the error of their ways and changing, they decide to crucify SpongeBob in order to bring back Krabby Patties, and then we just drop everything and head to the surface because Bob and Mr. K smell Krabby Patties somewhere in the distance. Was that a lot? Did that seem like a lot? Good, because it was. And that's what it felt like to watch this movie. God, I don't know what to say. I genuinely don't remember this movie being so unfocused. The entire time between the start of the apocalypse and journeying to the surface must have been so aggravating to watch for the audience who just wanted to see superhero SpongeBob shenanigans on the surface, only for the characters to essentially just twiddle their thumbs for an hour and desperately try to do anything but go to the surface. Anyways, the Krabby Patty trope brings the citizens to the entrance to the surface, and whoa, they're fish! They can't breathe on land! So all the secondary characters leave when suddenly, warping through time and space, Bubbles appears. He's here not to kill SpongeBob for destroying 2 major planets in the solar system, but to thank him for getting him fired because now he can do something with his life or something. Bubbles offers to get the crew to the surface safely and gives them the ability to breathe air. At least that's what I think these sparkles imply. I don't know, they've been on land just fine before, but hey, it's no big deal. I'm telling you, SpongeBob has never given a flying fuck about continuity. And so, the search for the formula leads them to Burger Beard's ship, where he reveals that, using the magic book which apparently has the ability to rewrite the story, he stole the secret formula and then banishes them to die on Pelican Island. However, using a page that Sandy got earlier in the movie, Sponge and his gangster crew write their own ending. They become superheroes and beat Burger Beard, getting the formula back and getting home. Plankton even joins in and saves the day, going as far as giving the formula back to Krabs in the end after learning to appreciate working with others. And so, with Burger Beard defeated, Bikini Bottom returns to normal and the movie ends. The movie ends.
Why am I talking to you? You're an inferior species. What could you know about tech?
Like I said, Sponge Out of Water is an alright movie with glaring flaws. Not only does the first hour drag on forever, but the developments on the surface come out of nowhere in context with the rest of the movie. Burger Beard stealing the formula, the book being magical, and hell, the gang getting superpowers are plot threads that have no build-up or foreshadowing, and without the trailers would make no sense to the audience.
This magic book, any evil plan I write comes true. I need the final page. that is protected deep below the surface. Bullseye!
There's the book! Now it's our turn to rewrite the story.
We know that SpongeBob admires superheroes thanks to his love of Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, but it's random as hell that this is the ending SpongeBob decides to write in the heat of the moment. In a movie where superheroes had no mention whatsoever, the main character just decides that it's gonna be super powered, and we just roll with it. Like, imagine you're doing the dishes thinking you're gonna be getting things ready for dinner, when suddenly your sponge is like, it's gonna be super powered, and then the third act of Sponge Out of Water starts playing. It's that out of place. However, despite being so disconnected from the rest of the film, the last 30 minutes of the movie are pretty cool. The set pieces on the surface are a joy to see, and the hilariously excellent score by John Debney is just so fucking funny. Like, bro is going so hard on this SpongeBob movie. Every character gets a cool moment showing their superpowers, and I'm sorry, but it's really fun seeing Squidward take this as seriously as everyone else. And seeing him work together with Dollar Bob and Poundrick in this epic final battle truly brought a tear to my eye. And while the theme of the movie being teamwork was so annoyingly thrown in your face the entire movie, I do appreciate how it comes together in the end. It takes everyone to bring down Burger Beard, and I really love how, in the end, it's the teamwork of Plankton and SpongeBob that brings him down. Also unrelated, but these would go so unbelievably hard as Fortnite skins. Make it happen, Epic. All in all, Sponge Out of Water is nowhere near the level of its predecessor, and it's not even close. 10 years in the making put a lot of pressure on this movie, and that pressure ended up cracking it, in my opinion. To me, this movie has the quality of late season 8, early season 9. It's still not good in comparison to the golden era of the show, but it shows promise. I will say, I at least appreciate the movie trying to develop Plankton. Hell, I wasn't kidding when I said that they just straight up kill Karen. He has an emotional moment with her before shutting her off, and it's honestly pretty sweet. He's the only character in the movie that really has a complete arc from start to finish. And even after this movie and the show proper, we see a lot more episodes where he's on SpongeBob's side, or we see a more humble side of him, and I think that's pretty cool.
That being said, compared to the first SpongeBob movie, it is such a shame how flat this movie turned out. You know how I said that the simple premise of the first movie was great because it allowed the team to flesh out the characters in a way they've never done before? The premise of Sponge Out of Water is so complicated and so bloated that it doesn't let them have room for any character motivations or arcs. SpongeBob has no motivation or arc in this movie besides, I guess, getting the formula back. But there's no background journey for him to go on like in the first movie, so it just turns out so flat. And the same could be said for every other character. Yes, they heard my cries and used them well in the finale, but do you really think that any of them had depth or reason at all to be there? They're just here for marketability, really. I don't know. As a movie, it's fine, I guess. But compared to the first, this is just nothing. But it is what it is, I guess. This is just what we got. So, with that said, let's go ahead and move on to... Whoa! Did you guys see that? Oh my gosh, that sponge surely is on the run!
Alright, I'm not even going to be subtle about this. I do not like this movie. Or at least I didn't going into this. I've only ever seen this movie once, and it was the day it dropped. I loathed this movie. I felt it dragged too much, the story was just a retread of an earlier episode, and its emotional moments are undermined by miswriting potential and the sheer existence of Camp Coral. Ever since I've seen this movie, I have always believed it to be the weakest by a landslide. But how is it now with fresh eyes? Well, the third movie, Sponge on the Run, came out during the height of the bubonic plague, and ended up skipping theaters because of it, which is just such a shame because this movie is gorgeous. Unlike the first two, Sponge on the Run is fully animated using stylized CGI, and I gotta say, it works really well. It takes the approach that the Peanuts movie and Spider-Verse uses with their animation by emulating 2D animation and choppy frames to its advantage. The animation is a great imitation of the show's iconic style, and is a technical marvel. The colors colors and environments are gorgeous, and the characters' expressions are just a sight to see. I would have loved to see this movie on the big screen. The visuals are enough to just make me want to see this again. The movie follows SpongeBob and Patrick going on a road trip to the lost city of Atlantic City, no relation, in order to save Gary, who has been kidnapped by King Poseidon. He's a big narcissist who uses the slime of snails to keep his skin smooth. And now that he's gone through all the snails in the sea, Gary is the only snail left. And so, in order to get SpongeBob out of his hair, Plankton gives Gary to the king, forcing Bob and Pat to go after him. Meanwhile, in SpongeBob's absence, the Krusty Krab begins to fall apart, and the side characters just feel lost without him. I will say, Sponge on the Run opens strong. You can definitely tell that they wanted to capture the magic of the first movie with the whole SpongeBob Patrick road trip angle, and King Poseidon being the main force of the movie. The stakes are high as the movie takes time to establish the relationship between Gary and Sponge, so there's emotional investment there. Plus, this is the only SpongeBob movie to feature this underground pop group called Weezer, so all in all, I'm really excited to see where this movie takes us. Oh no. So the movie decides to take our boys to the surface in a dream that the characters are aware is a dream? Seriously, did you know that this is a dream where they meet Keanu Reeves, the tumbleweed, who tells them that they have to free the lost souls of these cowboy zombies in order to receive the coin of courage or something? And the zombies start having a dance party to the tune of Snoop Dogg, and then all of a sudden, the big boss cowboy comes in, and he imprisons our boys for trying to free his zombies, and then they're all like, "Well, this is a dream, so we're good." Yeah, fuck off, Mr. Cowboy. Did you know that this is a dream? And then the cowboy is all like, "No, dude, this isn't a dream," and tries to kill them, but they defeat him by showing him the light. Just when you think the zombies are gonna kill them for killing their boss, their souls actually do get freed. But uh-oh, the cowboy isn't dead and he's after them. Oh no. But then SpongeBob and Hat-Trick wake up because, OMG, it was a dream! This went on for 20 minutes! Yeah, this is the main scene that made me hate this movie back then. It just drags on and on. It has no consequence on the plot because, well, it's a dream! We know it's a dream going in, and they keep telling us that it's a dream! Anyways, the only thing that matters is that Keanu Reeves comes with us. Joy! I am convinced that this character is not real, because no other character ever acknowledges him. Oh, and SpongeBob gets the coin of justice or whatever. It'll help him be brave! Wow! Anyways, once we get past that scene, the movie actually starts to pick up. The boys make it to Atlantic City and get distracted by its glamour and casino, and it's actually a pretty fun sequence. They wake up drunk the next morning, having wasted so much time, and they try to grab Gary from the king, but are obviously thrown in jail and set to be executed because, well, he's the king. Come on, guys, what was your plan? So Sponge and Rick are thrown in the slammer, and SpongeBob basically gives up. And they both have a big fight because Patrick bet away the coin of courage while they were drunk, even though they show that it was SpongeBob's fault. They literally joke about the third act breakup trope at the start of the movie, and they still ended up doing it? That's so funny! It's so funny! Anyways, back in Bikini Bottom, the gang see that SpongeBob and Patty are set to be executed, and so Mr. Krabs, Sandy, Squidward, and even Plankton decide to race to Atlantic City to save them by using the Patty wagon from the first movie. That's pretty neat, movie! I see you! So the gang make it just in time, and they decide to make a case for SpongeBob, talking about how he's a nice guy and how much he's affected their lives. And ignoring the fact that the legal system doesn't work that way, this is such an emotional scene actually, and it honest to God got me misty. Especially during Squidward's speech, where he proclaimed to the world that even though he gets on his nerves 24/7, he loves SpongeBob. And this line he says at the end of his speech put chills down my spine.
This little nattering noach is my friend. and he doesn't deserve to die.
Roger Bumpus cooked there. That line delivery was solid. And then Mr. Krabs starts talking about the secret formula and how SpongeBob is the formula, metaphorically speaking anyways, and how their lives wouldn't function without him. They sing a pretty solid song about it, and, well, this scene is just perfect. Perfect in every way. No flaws. What's that? When they're talking about SpongeBob, they're recollecting their days at Camp Coral and spend 5 minutes apiece showing their backstory with him? That makes no sense if you've even seen one episode of the show? What? This scene only serves to put interest in Camp Coral, that shitty SpongeBob spinoff that is so high quality? I see. Well then.
The night ball.
My name is Zuki
Yeah, back in the day, this killed the movie for me. It didn't seem possible, but Nickelodeon really did it. They put the budget, time, and effort into this movie and attempted to have it in theaters just for it to be a walking, talking advertisement for Camp Coral. These fabricated backstories undermine the emotional value of this scene, which really sucks because this scene is so good. If they had reanimated actual scenes from the show, or hell, even made something up that would be in line with the character still, this scene would elevate the movie for a lot of people. But that's not what we got. Instead, we got this regurgitated garbage in order to promote other regurgitated garbage. And that being said, even with this, to put it bluntly, shit, this scene is still really good, and I still got misty at these characters coming together to help Bob. The subtext behind it still pisses me off, don't get me wrong, but hey, maybe it's something about being older and not caring as much, or it being a few years so I know what to expect from the movie, but I can recognize that the third act of this movie is really good. I actually really liked it. After the song, there's a really fun chase sequence of the gang trying to escape the city, and Poseidon is actually a pretty intimidating threat. He gives Punchball an ultimatum. He'll drop the charges against him and all will be well, if he gives up Gary. And the yellow square finally gathers the courage to stand up to the king and tell him no. In a pretty funny dose of reality of SpongeBob defying the monarch of the sea with unlimited power before he goes all Steven Universe on him and changes his mind. Poseidon realizes he doesn't have any friends. SpongeBob tells him looks don't matter. Then he really lets himself go. Eesh. Bikini Bottom then becomes a snail refuge, taking in the kidnapped snails, and it's a really sweet ending. All in all, it's an alright movie. It has way too many glaring flaws to truly surpass the first movie, but it has enough going for it that it can stand on its own. Story-wise, despite just being the same concept as an earlier episode in the show, it feels grand enough to be really entertaining. It has the same problem as the second movie where it twiddles its thumbs for an unnecessary amount of time, killing time before we get to the main event of the movie. But in a way, I think this movie excels past its predecessor. Ignoring the Camp Coral stuff, Sponge on the Run has a lot of emotional value that any SpongeBob fan can invest in. And the first and third acts of the movie are really good. But that in itself is the problem. You have to ignore a pretty sizable chunk of the movie for it to be good. You have to ignore the 20-minute zombie cowboy scene, or the unnecessary presence of Keanu Reeves, or the contradictory character drama, or the 10-minute jerk-off scene of them promoting a morally questionable spin-off show. And if you're watching this as a fan of the show, you have to suspend your belief a lot in this story when it comes to certain elements of it. I know I've said that SpongeBob has never really given a damn about continuity, but this is pushing it. You have to completely ignore the existence of King Neptune. We gotta ignore the fact that we've been to Atlantis before with David Bowie, except, oh wait, sorry, this is actually Atlantic City, my mistake! You gotta believe that snails are an endangered species in the show, despite them being a very common pet there, and even being seen in the previous fucking movie. And worst of all, you have to completely forget about the many episodes showing how these characters met and how their childhoods were in exchange for this Camp Coral revisionist history. Literally, the second episode of the show is SpongeBob meeting Sandy for the first time. How do you fuck that up? There is too much wrong with this movie to call it good, but I gotta say, I just enjoyed myself here better than the second movie. I don't know, there's still a lot bad with it, but the story is refreshing since it doesn't rely on the Krabby Patty formula is stolen or missing for the third time in a row. God, it's insane to me that my views on these movies have just completely flopped. I used to champion Sponge Out of Water as a great movie that in some regards surpassed the first, and I used to hate Sponge on the Run with my entire being. But now, I see them both as vastly inferior to the first, with the third movie being just slightly better than the second to me.
While Sponge on the Run has many problems, it also has some pretty good positives too, like its amazing visuals and great character moments. Plus, it's pretty funny too, so it has that going for it. The SpongeBob Movie Trilogy is an interesting one to me, because it starts up here, and then it just goes down. Like I said, it's really interesting to see these movies represent the different eras of the show, and while I am a firm believer that this series peaked with its first entry, I am actually pretty excited to see what comes next. Later this year, a fourth SpongeBob movie called Saving Bikini Bottom, the Sandy Cheeks movie, will drop on Netflix. And the premise actually sounds pretty exciting. It'll be fun to finally see Sandy not be shafted in one of these movies.
So I am adding this in as I'm finishing up this video, and I'm here to say that this movie that I just talked about, the Sandy Cheeks movie, that's supposed to come out later this year on Netflix, the entire thing just leaked on Twitter. Like, the entire movie. This is a very unprecedented thing. I say unprecedented, but I mean like just the situation with Nickelodeon on Netflix in general, because something similar recently happened to an upcoming Fairly Odd Parents reboot that has not been formally announced or teased or anything like that. It just dropped out of nowhere. It's just an interesting thing, I guess. Obviously I won't be showing stuff from the movie here because it is, it's leaked material, so I honestly don't know if I should even be talking about it right now. I've seen bits and pieces of it. I'm gonna be honest, does not look good. Like, from what I've seen story-wise and even, like, visual-wise, it looks like the animation budget of Camp Coral and looks really bad. But I haven't seen the whole movie, so I'm not going to judge the story at all or the characters at all. I've only seen out-of-context clips on Twitter, so I'm not going to give this movie judgment until we actually get a release. But I just wanted to add this in because this happened this week, and this happened after I recorded all that and scripted it and started editing it, so just wanted to add that in. Yeah. Get your shit together, Nickelodeon.
And then next year, we have a fifth SpongeBob movie called The SpongeBob Movie: The Search for SquarePants. And we know nothing about this one, but I am fucking calling it. This is just gonna be the episode where SpongeBob lost his memory and goes missing again, much like how Sponge on the Run was just the episode where Gary went missing. So, with that said, yeah, we're getting 2 more SpongeBob movies. God, we're getting 2 more SpongeBob movies. Anyways, that's gonna be it for now. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, take care.